Today we are here to talk about the best mystery thriller soupçon of horror that I read in 2022. So these are not necessarily 22 releases, but these are the best books that I read in my 2022 reading year. And along with sci-fi fantasy, this mystery thriller list was so hard to narrow down. Maybe the hardest, because I had a ton of 4-star books to fill out the bottom of the list. And I went back and forth a lot, and I don't know, it was hard. So many things that I read this year that I really enjoyed that could have made the list. I was in a mystery thriller kind of mood. I think some of that is that the mystery thrillers that are getting published right now, the things that are on trend, are more in alignment with my reading taste than they have been in years past. I tend to be not a big fan of like domestic thrillers or domestic suspense. So there's not been as much of that, and there's been more isolation tropes or actual mysteries, things like that. So let's get into this very exciting list, because there are a lot of great things that I read and things that I really am excited to talk about. Okay, sneaking in at number 10, I've got The Cutting Season by Attica Locke, and I felt like this had to make the list just because of how, like, this is one of the best written books on this list. Felt like the writing quality was super high. This is somewhere between a mystery and a suspense, I would say. Basically, our main character is the manager at this plantation in the American South, and she finds somebody dead on the property, and she has a lot of secrets in her own past and things she's trying to manage. So that is driving some of the conflict, as well as the fact that this land is now being worked by hired hands, and that's what the person who was killed, what she did. And so there's sort of like big farming themes in here, as well as a lot of exploration about the lingering effects of enslavement on the culture of the American South and on its people. So I felt like this was super well written and a very engaging version of a slow burn mystery, if that makes sense. Like, I was really invested in this, even though it felt very slow burn. Attica Locke has been described as writing rural noir, so think of that as kind of the vibe and tone. And then number 9 is a very pleasant surprise for me, which was Marple, 12 New Mysteries by 12 different authors. Now, as with any short story collection, there are highs and lows, and basically this is a collection of 12 short stories written by 12 different authors using the Marple character from Agatha Christie. And I was somewhat skeptical about how well I was going to do with this. But I've got to tell you, when I actually got into it, the vast majority of these I thought were very worthy attempts at recreating the Marple character. I think it helps that Marple in the original, like in the canon, works really well in short stories. Like, I think that's kind of where she's best used. So I think that really lends itself to this project, and I really enjoyed seeing so many different kind of perspectives on the same character from different authors who would sort of emphasize different parts of the Marple character. There were definitely some misses in here. Apparently, I just can't get on with Lucy Foley no matter how much I try, and no matter even if she's writing a character I love. But there were some big hits in here, and I think I said that at the end of this, I felt like the Jean Kwok and the Ruth Ware were probably the two that I felt like would be my nominees for writing more Marple stories, but I would be happy with any number of the people who contributed to this carrying on and writing more, specifically Marple short stories. I'm still a little hesitant about a full novel, but I would love to see another project like this from the Christie estate. And then my top 4-star at number 8, and the book that I originally gave 4.5 to, but the more I thought about it, the less it stuck with me. So I felt like it needed to come to a 4-star, because I should say the difference between a 4 and a 4.5. A 4 to me is like an A-, a 4.5 is like an A, and a 4.5 I think of as being a favorite of the year, whereas like a 5-star is an all-time favorite. So I don't think that this would quite make like an overall favorite of the year list the more I thought about it, but this book was so emotional. It's a lot about fathers and sons, and it made like that is just a way to pull on my heartstrings, and this definitely did. I cried. Basically, I would call this probably maybe like a revenge or a conspiracy thriller. Two old guys who their sons were married, and both of them had very complicated relationships to their sons' sexual identities, and they weren't really a part of their granddaughter's life, and then their sons are killed, and it seems to be basically a hate crime. Graves end up getting vandalized, and they're like, we're gonna find out what happened. So I felt like this moved at a really nice clip. I don't know that I would have loved this. This is not really like usually my kind of book, maybe is the way to say it. But there was just something about the combination of some of the thematic content about these characters. I felt like this was a very character-driven kind of book that I personally really connected with. I tend to really be a character-driven reader in a lot of my genre fiction. So I really connected with both of the characters. There's some really interesting stuff about race in here because one of the families is Black and the other one is white. So it was an interracial same-sex marriage. And yeah, so I just think that there's a lot going on here thematically, emotionally, and this is not normally my thing, but I'm really glad that I ended up picking this up. I feel like I picked this up because of the Goodreads Choice Awards and a bunch of my audience telling me that they thought that I would like this, and I'm really, really glad I did. So a surprise hit, but a hit nonetheless. And then we're at the bottom, I guess, of my 4.5 stars. So these are ones that were really eligible for like favorite books of the year. So this would be number 7. Number 7 is Shiver by Allie Reynolds. Now look, I feel like I have to defend this because there are some problems with this book. I don't think that this is a perfect book, and I do think that there is some of the representation, let's just put it that way, is not excellent in this book. So I would give that as a warning. But in terms of delivering an isolated close circle mystery thriller trope to me, which is what I personally just love, it's when everybody's stuck together, people start dying, and you got to figure out who done it. I am an absolute sucker for that. That is my favorite trope. I just love it. And this gave me that trope as good as most books I've read with that trope. Like, it gave me the plot beats I wanted. It gave me the vibes I wanted. It's a bunch of friends who were snowboarders together in college, and they're like getting reunited. Somebody in their group went missing, and like what happened to her. It does have a dual timeline, and I don't think the past timeline is as interesting. And because of that, I almost gave this a 4-star. Like, this was another one on the bubble between a 4 and a 4.5. And actually, the more time goes on, maybe this should be a 4-star. I don't know. But I did just really love the way that the isolation part of this came together. And I actually also really like the way the past timeline wrapped up, even if I didn't always love it itself. So for that reason, this just hit my pleasure buttons in terms of what I like in this kind of book. And it was snowy. I love it when there's like I love the isolation books where the reason they're isolated is for snow. That's one of my favorites. So yeah, this is just a great book to read at winter, and I'm not arguing it's perfect or great, but it just it thoroughly entertained me, which is what I was looking for. Speaking of books that thoroughly entertain me, even if I wouldn't argue that they're the best, Never Saw Me Coming by Vera Kurlan. I stayed up late reading this one, which I think of as always a mark of a particularly effective book. And this was just... it just was so entertaining to me. It's very voice driven, and it's a serial killer book, and I love serial killer thrillers. So basically the setup for this is that there is a research study happening at this university where they are studying psychopathy, and some of the students at the university are in the study. So they're psychopaths, or they have antisocial personality disorders, I think is the official way you would say that. And somebody has figured out that that's what the study is for, and they are killing the people in the study. So it's like the psychopaths are trying to figure out who is hunting them. And I just think that that was such an entertaining setup. And it's got a couple of different POVs, but our main kind of like central POV is first person, and it's very voicey. It's very a very unique or distinctive perspective or writing style that for me really worked. That's something else I tend to like in a mystery thriller, is voice-driven mystery thriller. Think like The Maid, which made my list last year. I tend to really like that, a unique, distinctive perspective, and I felt like this had it. and it just was super, super entertaining. So for me, this was delivering a lot of what the best to me of a mystery thriller does, which is it just kept me turning the pages and wanting to find out what was going to happen next. Okay, and I think, are we in the top 5? Yes, we are in the top 5. Okay, cool. So, number 5, The Haunting of Maddie Clare by Simone St. James. This is one I am shocked is as popular as it is, because this feels like very much a Mara book, but I am surprised other people like this as much as I did, because I wouldn't argue that this is the most effective romance or the most effective horror element or like paranormal element, but the combination of the two really works for me, and it feels like a cozier version of paranormal or horror. So basically the setup is it's in the 20s or the teens. Yeah, the 20s. 20s in England, and there is this haunted barn, and this dude needs a female assistant to go with him because the ghost will only talk to women. Maddie Clare is the titular ghost. Things ensue from there. Like I said, there's a strong romantic element of this. I wouldn't call this a romance, but it does have a strong romantic element that for me, again, I wouldn't argue that it was great, but it worked. The type of like I hate you, but I want to kiss you dynamic worked for me in this particular book. And I found myself chip, turning the pages, couldn't stop reading it, and it just was very entertaining. Again, I think you'll see the unifying theme through this is mystery thriller is really a genre where I'm looking for fun. If I'm having a good time, I'm happy. And if I'm not having a good time, I'm probably gonna either DNF it or I'm gonna be mad about it. So I had a great time in this, and I tend to really like Simone St. James and the way she builds her stories. And then number 4, disclaimer is that I am friends with the author and unconscious bias is a thing, so I acknowledge that. But Pretty Dead Queens by Alexa Dunn, just again, I had a great time, and this was hitting a lot of the tropes that I really like, especially in a YA. So we have small town secrets, we have secrets from the past, and this is heavily inspired by a Mrs. Fletcher Murder, She Wrote-esque character or setup. So we have a small town where there was a notorious murder in the 70s. Cut to the 2020s, one of the students or one of the people in the friend group at the time of that murder went on to become a famous mystery author, and it's like the 50-year anniversary, so there's a lot of things building up. Our main character has lost her mom. She's come back to live with her grandma, who is that murder mystery author, and that she's trying to figure out what happened in the past, and then things in the present start to happen as well. So all in all, I just was super entertained by this. I had a great time. This gave me a lot of what I like best in a YA small town mystery. Number 3 is The Woman in the Library by Sulari Gentle. This was just, again, it had a strong romantic element in this mystery, which I don't think most people will like, or a lot of people probably didn't like, but for me worked. I do find a romance in a mystery, if it all comes together, can be a very welcome element for me, because mystery I don't tend to like mysteries that are super dark in their tone. Like, I'm not usually a noir kind of gal, and I do find a lot of the sort of like gritty or hard-hitting mystery thrillers to be kind of tedious. So for me, I think a romantic element in a book can often just signal to me that this is not the tone that the book is going for. So maybe I just process that. Maybe that's why I like that element as it's been showing up in some of these books. But anyway, The Woman in the Library is sort of like a reverse locker room mystery. So basically, somebody is killed in the Boston Public Library, and we know at the beginning that one of the people in this room, this reading room, who were all together when it happened, one of them is the killer. So like, how did that happen? Because they were all together when the murder happened. It also has a metatextual element to it that really sent this to the next level for me. The metatextual element of basically writing critiques going back and forth between the author of the story we're reading and one of her like writing group friends. The progression of that is what took this over the top for me from a 4 to a 4.5, because I loved that. And I tend to like a book that has like a book within a book, a metatextual element, mixed media, something like that. That really is something that works for me in pretty much all genres, but definitely in mystery thriller. And so that really was effective for me as well. So this I very much enjoyed and highly entertained by this one. Number 2 in my top 4.5 of the year is Never Coming Home by Kate Williams. This is a YA retelling of And Then There Were None, and this is one of the best And Then There Were None retellings I've ever read. It is definitely upper YA because it is very violent for a YA. So if you are either not usually a YA reader but willing if it's more mature, or if you're typically a YA reader and you're looking for kind of a gateway into more adult books, I would say that this maybe is like new adult is the way to think about it, because the characters are older and like I said, it is very violent. It is, if you've read And Then There Were None, this is definitely a clear homage, but I would not say it's a one-to-one retelling. For me, I just felt like that this had the exact right plot beats for this kind of story where all of these influencers are brought to this island, somebody dies, and then there's like a planned killing progression, like where all of them are slowly getting picked off. So, I mean, the subtitle is It's Not a Vacation, It's a Trap. So think Fire Festival meets And Then There Were None is kind of the pitch. And I thought that the writing was really good in this. Overall, this was just super entertaining and, like I said, one of the best retellings of one of my all-time favorite books. So for that reason, I felt like it had to be near the top of the list. And then finally, my 5-star pick in mystery thriller, which as I mentioned, I think before, 5-star is an all-time favorite book. I would have to say Moonflower Murders by Anthony Horowitz is now an all-time favorite book. Now, I also gave Magpie Murders a 4.5, but I felt like these are the 2 entries in the same series, so that would be weird to have them both on the list at different slots. So I'm just putting them together. I do think you should read Magpie Murders before you read Moonflower Murders, FYI. But what I love about both of these is that they are metatextual, so they are books within books. It's an homage to Christie, though that did throw me off at first because I don't think the writing, like tone or quality in the Atticus Pound books are anything like Christie. So basically we have an author who has written this kind of Poirot-esque character, and that is Atticus Pound, and he's very clearly a pastiche or an homage to Poirot, but don't expect a Christie tone or writing style in that book. But those books that are the book within the book take place or are set in like the Christie era, so like the 40s, 50s, 60s kind of thing. And then the other, like the real timeline within this world is contemporary, so set in our day. And in both of them, there is a mystery in the book, and then there's a mystery in real life. They kind of inform each other, especially Moonflower Murders. It's just quintessentially what I want from a murder mystery. It's just so satisfying in terms of the pace and the kinds of conflicts and the kinds of characters and the kinds of little twists. Like, it's just such fan service to people who love these kinds of books, and it's just undeniable to me. It's so entertaining and so fun. I will say I don't love some of the like seemingly unaddressed homophobia or like implied homophobia in these, because the writer of the Atticus Pound novels is a gay man. I don't know. Some of that I think is a little weird, and I've heard some things about the author that I'm just, anyway, I just want you to know that that's a little weird, and know that before you go into it. And if you can't hang with that, that's honestly understandable. But for me, aside from that, these are just so entertaining, and I hope we get another one. We've gotten a bunch of the Hawthorne and Horowitz ones. I want another. This is the Susan Ryland series, and I want another one of them. Yes, please, thank you. Okay, so those were my top mystery thrillers of 2022. Like I said, an abundance of choice here because I had a really, really good mystery thriller reading year, and I hope that 2023 I have the same energy, because I have a lot of books on my TBR that I'm very excited about that I think I'm gonna love, so wish me luck. But let me know what you thought about any of the books I talked about, and let me know what your favorite mystery, thriller, suspense, horror books were in 2022. Let me know that below. And yeah, I think that will do it for this video. So if you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, follow me on the social medias if you are so inclined. I have all that information listed in the description box below, and I think that that will do it. I hope you're having an absolutely lovely day today, and I will just talk to you soon. Bye!